Hi, so today on the podcast, I'm speaking to Finn Prevett, the co-author of The Positive Planner, the best-selling well-being journal brand that launched in 2017 and has since grown into a global multi-title business supporting mental health, self-growth, and everyday well-being. I had a really great conversation with Finn. So we start by talking about the inspiration for The Positive Planner, how she built a community around the brand, why they decided to launch via crowdfunding rather than going down some of the more traditional routes, and about how just last year they were acquired by Penguin Publishing. So the books are now published by Penguin, and we talk about the difference that that's made for Finn and her co founder, Ali. So this was a really fascinating conversation. I really hope you enjoy it. There's lots to learn here. So I'd love now to introduce you to Finn. So, hi, Finn. Thank you so much for being here.
Hello, thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. Can we please start by you giving an introduction to yourself, your business, and what you sell?
Yes, of course. So I'm Finn Prevett. I am co-creator of the Positive Planner. So we make planners and journals, and they're all designed to support mental health and well-being. We're stationery lovers, so they're all very kind of stylish, elegant pieces of stationery, but they're there to support mental health and well-being.
Amazing. Thank you. And can you tell us a little bit about how the idea first came about?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was, gosh, over 8 years ago now, which feels crazy to say. But yeah, in 2017, um, was when the idea was kind of born. Myself and my co-creator Ali had both had quite young children. We were friends. We kind of knew each other from when we were living in London pre-children. We knew each other through a mutual friend, but we lost contact really, and it was not until when we both had very young children that we reconnected again. And the reason we reconnected is because we were both talking quite openly on social media about our mental health and how children had affected that and how we were kind of both struggling, which was kind of not something people really did back then. So we reconnected through that. And both of us had been drawn to use journaling as a way to look after our mental health. Um, at the time, therapy was not something that was affordable or available to either of us. And honestly, kind of the standard route of trying to get help wasn't really helping. So we were both kind of drawn to journaling. And again, that just sparked a conversation between the two of us. I had never been a journaler. I'm dyslexic and really struggled at school. So I had this belief that I was not a writer. So it was very strange to me when, kind of in the midst of postnatal depression, I was drawn to start writing. It's really simple. I just used to write a gratitude list at the end of each day, and I would do like lists to help me organize myself. And that was the kind of beginnings of journaling for me. Ali has always had a love of writing and is like always journals. She that kind of standard teenager that has journals with a padlock. And yeah, so for her, she was compelled to do it, but it certainly wasn't the first time she'd done it. So yeah, we just realized that journaling was so simple, so accessible, and that's something that's always been really important to us, to make accessible products that are kind of, a pen and a piece of paper. It's relatively inexpensive way to look after yourself, and it's really profound and can help so much. So that was kind of the early ideas of what has then grown into the Positive Planner.
Amazing, thank you. So, what were the early versions of the Positive Planner like? So, were you creating something for Ali and yourself to use personally? Is that how it started, or was it always the
Yeah.
idea that you'd create something bigger?
Well, I think initially we were just kind of playing with this idea of how journaling had helped us. I think it was about capacity then as well. So for me, being someone that was new to journaling, having prompts really helped. For Ali, as someone who was really into journaling from a young age, but her capacity had changed with postnatal depression. Having prompts really helped her too, because, it was just that structure and ease. So we both found that we were kind of playing around with prompted journaling. Ali had the idea for the Positive Planner, and we got chatting, like she'd started posting about the idea and talking about it. And so I kind of reached out to her and said, look, I love this idea and I've just started journaling. I've never journaled before. Like, it's just something I've started to do, and I'm really enjoying it. And we just kind of connected in that way, really. And initially, Ali's idea was to make a planner for mums. And I kind of came in and said, look, as someone that struggled with my mental health, not just from being a mum, but pre-mum, I think this could really help anyone. So that's kind of where the idea grew, really. And we just were kind of back and forth, sharing ideas on the phone at night when the kids were sometimes sleeping. And that was kind of how it grew. And then we felt that it was definitely something that other people would like. So we decided to sort of go for it and see if we could publish it. But we had like no expectation of what would happen. Obviously, no publishing experience. A little bit of design experience because Ali is costume designer, and so she's kind of got quite a creative eye and she can design things. But this was, way back when sketches were not digital, everything was like done pen and paper. So yeah, very little experience, but a lot of determination. And so we decided to do a crowdfunding campaign.
Amazing. And at the point, and I'm going to ask a bit more about the crowdfunding campaign in a moment, but at that point, did you have like a book that you'd designed, and how did you get to that point? Because I think even that's a huge achievement, because having seen your products and seen, and I'm sure the
Yeah,
first versions are different to the ones I'm seeing now,
yeah,
but
definitely.
seeing how detailed they are and how beautiful, and you've got like these amazing hardback covers. How did you
Mm,
get from having the idea to having something where you were like, okay, we could take it to crowdfunding now. This is
yeah.
actually a product. How did you get there?
Well, as I say, Ali is she's got a real kind of passion and talent for design. So for her, like, bringing something to life for Ali is just a skill that she has. So she was very from very early on, things don't overwhelm her. So the thought of like creating, I've got some of the books here, creating like a really beautiful hardback book with fabric and lovely details on, it didn't really seem to kind of phase her. Whereas for me, it was a bit more overwhelming because it wasn't really where my skill sets were. But we were very clear from the outset that it needed to be hardback. We really wanted it to be fabric. And we wanted it to be hardback so you could do it anywhere. So you can kind of open it up and, sit on a bus or sit on a train or sit in a cafe or sit in bed. So that was important. The fabric brought the element of the tactile softness. It feels
Mm.
nice, it's comforting. So fabric again was really important to us. Um, so Ali was really, really like great at that side of things and steering it and understanding colours and language and around textures and things. And then in terms of the internal design, we we actually we collaborated with a number of people to contribute designs to the book. So we had letter artists, calligraphy artists, some people that were doing digital things. Quotes were a really big thing in 2017, inspirational quotes. So we came across a lot of creatives doing that sort of thing. We had a lady who was a wallpaper designer. So all of the artworks were contributed for the original book. So it was that kind of collaborative element of community all coming together. And I guess we were all talking about similar things. We were talking about, the kind of the highs and lows and the reality of life, and everyone was sort of bringing their human element in their way. So it worked really well as a collaboration. So in terms of some of the interiors of the book, that that was kind of helpful because we had people that were skilled to do that. And then the designing of the rest of the book, we call them, can I swear slightly?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
We still today call them the shit sketch. So we basically make a shit sketch and then we work with a designer to bring it to life. And it's kind of a process that we've always done. So, we just get a piece of paper and we literally sketch what we want something to look like in a visual way. And then we work with a designer to bring that to life. So because of Ali's background being quite creative, she did know a graphic designer, Bex, who worked with us on all of our books actually, um, and she agreed to do some graphic designing for us, which was amazing. So she helped us bring those shit sketches to life, and then because we self-published, Ali's best friend's dad has a small publishing house in Bath, and he has a self-publishing element. So he helped us because, being published, we just had no idea. So it was lots of people really giving like support and helping us and cheering us along. And that's kind of what enabled us to get to the point of having this beautiful hardback book.
Oh, that's amazing. And I think, yeah, it sounds like there were so many people involved, but how great that you had like a community of people to like call on to help
Yeah.
you get there. That's so good. So,
Mm.
when it comes to crowdfunding, so first of all, why did that feel like the right first step, as opposed to self-publishing and trying to sell the books that you had? And what was the experience of crowdfunding like for you?
Well, we didn't have any money, so that
Yeah.
was the first hurdle. And, a project that you're doing when you're struggling with your mental health, juggling another job and children, a lot of people in your life are questioning that and maybe perhaps not going to support it because everyone kind of thought we were a bit bonkers taking this on. So it was kind of, we had to find a way to make it work, and we didn't have the finances to put money in ourselves. So we decided to try crowdfunding. And also, just the essence of the book was about community. And the essence of the book was opening up a conversation about mental health, which just wasn't being had at that point. So it felt like a really good way to do that, because we were building this community on Instagram and they were really engaged with us. And still today, we have such an engaged community from all those years ago. And so it just felt like we kind of found our tribe online and maybe not in our lives at that point. And so those were the people that were willing to invest in the idea. And so it kind of just went from there. And of course, like family and friends did support us and did like get on board with the crowdfunding campaign. But I think sometimes, like when you're conceptualizing an idea or you're sort of going through something, and it's almost easier to do it with like not your immediate community. It kind of almost feels safer. So yeah, we created this amazing like online community and just decided that crowdfunding was a way to leverage that.
That makes a lot of sense, particularly what you were saying about the people closest to you, because I think you're right that
Mm,
often because they care about you and they don't want to see you taking
yeah.
too much, they don't want to see you fail. I think they can sometimes be a bit, I don't want to say negative, but maybe
Mm,
pessimistic. I don't
yeah.
know. I'm trying to
Yeah.
think of the right way of
Definitely.
saying it, but they're not always as enthusiastic as people who don't know you. And then also, I think that's
Yeah.
because sometimes they're not the audience. Like if you've got family and
Yeah.
friends who
Yeah.
they don't journal, their mental health is in perfect
Yeah.
shape or whatever it
Yeah.
is,
Or
for
they've
them,
never
they might be like,
experienced that. Yeah.
yeah,
Why would
they might
someone
be
need
like,
this? Yeah, and I think that's an important lesson to learn for business owners because, like, if I think back, I've done so many different things in business, but I remember, like, my first business, um, someone saying to me, "Oh, I don't think that sounds like a very good idea, actually. I don't think anyone's gonna go for that." And I was so hurt at the time because I was only 20, and I was really like, oh, it really made me question it. And then actually it was really successful. And so I think I've always had that resistance in all of my businesses of people kind of saying, oh, but it's going to be a bit much, isn't it? Or, oh, I don't know if I'd really like that. And I think it's really important to make sure that you're getting your kind of advice or inspiration from people that understand your concept, because that's the opinions that are really valuable.
definitely. And that's something
Mm.
like I remind myself of this constantly. I was telling someone about an idea I had just last week and she was like, oh, are you sure? Is that going to work? And I
Mm.
had to give myself a talking to after and say, this isn't
Yeah.
somebody that's like the right fit for this. So of
Yeah.
course she doesn't think it's a good
Yeah.
idea because she doesn't know that she isn't from that world. She doesn't have
Exactly.
the issues
And
I'm trying to
we all
solve.
do that, we all do that ourselves. Like
Yeah.
I might flippantly say to someone else like, "Oh, I don't know about that," or "That doesn't sound good." And there was one of my very good friends actually was really worried about me when I was first coming into the Positive Planner, because I was struggling with my mental health and did have another business and I had a baby. And she sort of said, I just really think this is just not a good idea. Like, you're just taking on too much. And I just like, I don't think you should be doing this. And then about 18 months later, she said she walked into Waterstones in oh God, what's the place? Piccadilly, or I forget which one. It was like a flagship, Waterstones. And like, she saw the Positive Planner and she sent me a message like, I'm just so proud and I'm sorry that I like doubted that you could do this, because look, you've done it and you're in Waterstones. So it's sometimes hard to hear that from people closest to you, but I think if you kind of have a deep belief in something, then you have to just try to you have to weigh it up yourself. There's a lot of internal work that needs to be done, because sometimes things are too much and you do have to let them go, but sometimes they're really not, and only you can see that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what must have helped you though is that you had this community you were building on Instagram of people
Yes.
who were resonating with the products and with your mental health struggles. So I
Yeah.
guess, did that give you confidence going into the crowdfunding that there were people out there that would benefit from the products?
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Because you've got to kind of, it was just, we were both quite young when we had babies. I wasn't that young, but Ali was in her sort of, she was late 20s. I was 31, just, but none of my friends had babies. So literally none of them. My best friend had babies, but she had them when we were much younger. So we were at really different stages. No one around me really had babies. So my closest friends didn't really understand what I was going through, because you just can't unless you are. So that community that we were building on Instagram, it was a lot of parents, it was a lot of mums who just did get it. They kind of got the concept, they got what we were going through emotionally and mentally. And yeah, so they understood it. So yeah, it was important to find the right audience for sure.
Definitely. And so you mentioned that 18 months after the crowdfunding, or around that time, your books were in Waterstones. So how did you go from
Mm.
self-publishing, crowdfunding, to suddenly being stocked in like a massive bookstore?
Yeah. Well, um, it, it was, I mean, I don't want to downplay it, because but it was quite like, the way it happened didn't really take a lot of work from us, but then on reflection it did. So you could say it didn't, because we just got, when we got into Waterstones, Urban Outfitters and Barnes and Noble, all of those were just in the inbox. Urban Outfitters and Waterstones sent us a Instagram message.
Wow.
So with Waterstones, we got into foils first. And this amazing guy, Abel, that used to work at Foils and now has his own stationery shop, just came into the inbox and was like, I love what you're doing. Can you come and have a chat? So we went to London, we had a chat with him. He took two books on, put them in the shops, and then Waterstones took Foils over, something like that. So then they ended up also going into Waterstones because they'd been selling well in Foils. Um, but it's easy to downplay the hard work that you put in to make someone have the faith to send you that message into your inbox, because they're not going to send it to a company that doesn't look like it's kind of got its shit together. So we were really kind of keeping ourselves relevant. We were keeping our conversation going. We were keeping the community going. We were coming up with new ideas, bringing out new products. And so I guess the professionalism of all of that, with the personal story behind it, which I think has been a big positive for us to have that personal story, just made it intriguing to retailers.
I think that makes sense. And I think you're right. It would be easy to downplay it. However, I think had you not done all of that work, to build up the community and talk about your mental health and talk about the products,
Mm.
they possibly never would have found you in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you've got no online presence, obviously you can't really be a business without an online presence anymore. But if you've got a social media account or website or blog, whatever it is, and there's like posts from 5 years ago and nothing since, then no one's going to reach out to you. But yeah, so but it's finding that balance, isn't it? Because um, but back then it was different. This is like 6, 7 years ago. Instagram was very different. But what that then gave us the confidence to do was in 2021, we did our first trade show. So we had to do it online initially, and it was top drawer. We had to do it online because it was COVID. And it went really, really well. And we met Oliver Bonus at Top Drawer, and then got into some other really cool retailers. So then the next year we did the in-person one. So we did Top Drawer, Spring Fair. Those are the main UK ones. And so that was really the next step in the growth for our business.
I think that's where I met you actually, Top Jaw
Yeah, Top
2022. I was
Drawer.
thinking back, I
Yeah,
think that was it.
yeah.
And obviously your brand grew quite quickly, and then you ended up with retailers in the US as well as in the UK.
hmm
So what do you think made the products resonate so strongly? Because it does feel like um, you had you know, it just feel like growth was quite rapid, and people were obviously resonating
Mm.
with your products, and there was a real need for them.
I think so. We launched right at the end of 2017. So let's say 2018 and 2019. We had those 2 years before COVID. And during that time, we were getting traction and we got into Waterstones. We were in Urban Outfitters. And I just think that when COVID hit, it really forced a lot of people to stop and think about their mental health in a way that they never had before. And that could be because they didn't have time or they just never needed to. And during COVID, they began to struggle with their mental health. Maybe someone around them was struggling. So we noticed, I mean, it kind of, the business completely changed overnight. And I think another thing is people were craving routine during COVID. They wanted a routine and structure, and, guided journal gives you that. Our journals are morning and evening check-in, these particular ones. And so it gave that bookend to each day. And people would gift it. It was a nice thing to send to somebody during COVID. Um, so I think kind of all of those things really helped our direct customer business to grow massively during 2020. And then off the back of that, we were able to do a lot more advertising. Our Facebook ads were performing really, really well. And that then meant that we were being seen by other retailers, by people. We were doing ads in America as well, and selling in America. So direct to customer that at that point. And then sort of 2022 was when Barnes and Noble got in contact. So I would imagine that just all of that awareness and activity contributed to them finding out about us. Um, and I think that the human element, the story behind the brand, the humanity of it really helps. People like to kind of understand where it all came from. And they just look really good. As long as you love bright colours, then you'll love the way the books look. They look really nice together as well. So, when you walk into Waterstones and they've got them all together, it just looks really cool. So from a visual merchandising perspective, it also works really well. Um, and you saw the stand, so you know how bright and colourful it is. And again, just Ali's designer eye always means that everything looks really good together. So yeah, I think it's a combination of all those things.
Yeah, thank you. And I think as well that, by the way, this isn't taking anything away from the work that you've been doing, but do you think as well that, and I'm saying this anecdotally, but from what I'm seeing, mental health is becoming something people are a lot more happy to talk about. So
Yeah,
there are lots more people, regular people, famous people talking about mental health.
yeah.
There are podcasts about mental health. It feels like
Mm,
have it feels like mental health is something we can talk openly about, and people seem much more open to
yeah.
say, I'm having a bad time, I'm struggling. Whereas, as you say, back in 2017, I had my son in 2016, and I suffered from
Mm,
postnatal depression and found it really hard to talk about because I
yeah,
felt like I was the only one. I felt like
yeah,
everyone else was happy with their babies and was having a
yeah.
lovely time, and it was just me. And I really
Yeah.
feel
Oh,
like, I'm not having
yeah.
any more babies. Were I to have that same experience again today, I feel like I would be much happier to say, "Do you know what? This is hard. I'm
Yes.
struggling." I think the culture
Absolutely. Yeah.
shifted a lot, hasn't it?
Yeah, massively, massively. Um, Yeah, no, I think it's certainly helped, but I think we also feel really proud because we did play a part in that, and
Mm.
um, it takes, it definitely took a lot of bravery because I can remember in the early years, if I would like when people would, you'd meet people, what do you do? And I'd say about the positive planner. I would always be like, oh, here we go, because I'm going to have to tell them about my mental health, and then they're going to ask questions, and then it becomes and it felt quite vulnerable. Whereas now, if you say, oh, I make planners for mental health and wellness, people are like, oh, okay, cool, nice. There's no extra, like it's not loaded in the way that it used to be, which is great because it's become much more normalized to look after your mental health and well-being instead of reacting in a crisis. So yeah.
I do, and I agree. I think it was great that you were doing it such a long time ago because someone has to go first. The fact that people are
Yeah.
okay talking about it now, there has to be someone or some people at the
Mm,
beginning doing it to kind of, I
yeah.
don't want to say normalize it, but you know what I mean, to make it part of the conversation.
Absolutely.
Someone has to
Yeah.
start it. So I
Yeah.
think it's amazing that
Yeah.
you were doing that. And I guess that's
Yeah.
also helped with, as you say, growing the brand and this and the story because people can see, you've been talking about this for longer than a lot of other brands
Yeah.
have.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. And I think it's that vulnerability, but of, you know, mental health is never going away. So it's like your physical health, you have to keep looking after it. And so as someone that's grown up from a childhood with anxiety right up to now, I know that it's always going to be a work in progress. I'm never going to wake up one day and suddenly never get depressed again. It's just so our tools are there to kind of just be that constant companion. And we never promise that it's going to cure you or take away, the way that you feel, but it's just a gentle companion to kind of have an honest space. And because they're prompted, it just takes away the load if you're many people don't, they feel quite intimidated by a blank page, like do some journaling, here's a blank page. So it just makes it softer and more accessible.
Definitely. I think it's a really nice a positive planner was the first guided journal I ever bought years ago before we met. And I really like
Yeah.
the fact that it was telling me what to write about because, as you
Mm,
say, a blank page is really intimidating if you don't see
yeah.
yourself as a journaler or a writer.
Yeah.
So so last year your books became published by Penguin, which is a huge milestone. Can you tell us a little bit about how that came about?
Yes, definitely. Another one of those situations where like lots of people that love us had opinions, lots of people around us, good and bad opinions. But we just knew that um, we wanted to be doing things in a new way, in a different way. Um, Really, what it was about for us was relinquishing some of the parts of the business that had meant we had no capacity or time or finances for like growth artistically or creatively. So it had just become really like an operational um a logistical operation in terms of getting books printed, shipping them, fulfilling orders, the accounts, finding lost products or dealing with damaged books, or, kind of, it was just become a logistical machine. Thankfully, we had amazing team, particularly Hazel, Ali's sister, who you met many times. And I mean, you know, because we worked with you, how hard we worked and how many plates we were spinning. So, growing in America, we were doing Amazon, we were it was just constant up leveling, constant, okay, now we need to up level the fulfillment. Now we need another warehouse. Now we need another partner for this. Okay, now Trump's come in and shipping's gone up 4 times. And so now we need to factor that in. And it was just constant. And I think we just had like a realization about this time last year that we just weren't enjoying it anymore. And it was actually like having a detrimental effect on our own mental health, which seemed crazy to, but it was a bit of a wake up call. I think we were both like, this is not enjoyable. We love what we're doing so much. We love the products and we believe in the methodology and the concept so deeply, but showing up to work in this way every day is just not enjoyable anymore, and it's not sustainable. We decided that we needed to just completely switch up how we were doing things. And that was when we started having conversations about finding a publisher. And our dream was to find a publisher that would allow us basically to focus on the creative side and the community side and writing new journals. So that was kind of how we went into it. And yeah, we got a great outcome. We spoke to I mean, we didn't know where to start. So, but we knew like what we wanted the outcome to be, but we didn't really know how to get there. We had been approached by a publisher in 2019, and we had a publishing agent work with us whilst we decided whether to go with them or not. We decided not to, but we've reapproached our publishing agent, Jane, and just said, look, we think now is the time to move into publishing. What do you think? And at first she was like, well, I don't really know why, because you're doing so well. Why would you want to hand it over to a publisher? And that was how all the meetings began with the publishers as well. So we had lots of meetings with different publishers. But once we explained to them, then they totally got it. So yeah, so we went to Jane. Jane, we put this pitch together, worked on a pitch document that got sent to all the different publishers, and then the publishers that wanted to meet with us arranged a meeting. So we had several meetings with different publishers. And then it was kind of just back and forth until we found one that we felt happy with.
Well, that's amazing. And like you say, I guess it now enables you to work differently. So what exactly has changed for yourself and Ali now that you've moved to working with Penguin?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's all the dust is still settling. And I feel like this year is going to be a really good year for us to really understand what this new chapter looks like. Because although like we're working with a publisher, there was still obviously a lot of logistics to kind of move over to that. But already, I mean, Ali and I have wanted to go on a creative writing retreat for well, for the whole time we've had our business, but we've just never been able to make it work. And um, it was just not an option to us to go away for 5 days and only work on a book. It had to be kind of 2 hours here, 2 hours there, 3 hours with the team. Like it was just. So the first thing we did is we went on a creative writing retreat to Istanbul because we're writing our new book. And that was like a celebration of our new chapter. And it was testing out this kind of going somewhere new, being in a new environment and writing. And it was absolutely incredible. And it was just like, it felt like a real celebration of what we'd achieved so far. And not just because of Penguin, because yes, that's an amazing achievement, but everything we'd achieved up to that point, we hadn't ever really had time to pause and celebrate because there's always the next thing to do, or the next order to fulfill, or the next obstacle to overcome, or the next problem to solve. So it felt, yeah, like a real celebration. And just to be able to do that was something we would not have been able to do before. And now what it means is like we've freed up time for other things. So Ali's gone back into the theatre world. So she's working on a show at the moment, and she's working in costume and yeah, like really enjoying it. And she's got a dog. She's taken up choir, and I have a toddler. So it's enabled me to spend more time with my toddler, to finish work like when my son finishes school, which has been amazing. I've got another business in Kenya, which is holiday rentals, which is like a very like a nice creative outlet for me. So I guess it within the positive planner, it's allowed a lot more space for creativity. And within our personal lives, it's just allowed us to do things that fulfill us in a different way. So all in all, it's been good so far.
Well, that's brilliant. And thank you for sharing that. Sounds like a really good outcome. I guess it's really nice having someone now to do some of those more like logisticy things and, as you say, free you up to do the creative thing, the things that you're good at and the things that you enjoy. I mean, that's the
Mm.
dream, isn't it?
Yeah, and because we're both trained coaches as well, life coaches and business coaches, I tend to do a bit more strategic and business coaching. Ali's, won't surprise you, creative coaching. She's very creative. Um, so it's kind of allowed us to lean into that as well. And this new book that we're writing, we've just got more headspace to think about it. So we're able to kind of really dig into our coaching learnings and education that we've had with coaching and things that we've learned, and just think of things in a more creative way and approach things differently because we've just got a little bit more headspace.
That makes sense. Thank you. Now, I would love to get some of your advice for our listeners. So, for
Hmm.
anyone listening who has an idea that's maybe based on their own personal experience, but they're not quite sure whether it's a business, do you have any advice, or is there anything you'd want them to know?
I think I think it's like you often hear like people say, "Oh, just go for it," but and as much as I think like we should just go for ideas and we should run with things, what I would encourage people to do if it's like a personal connection is to just pause and maybe take a bit of time to think about how you can make it sustainable. Because showing up and talking about something so personal can become tiring and difficult and relentless in a way. So we had to really change and adapt the way that we were talking about mental health. Because it was becoming detrimental to our mental health. So I think if you're starting up a business or creating a product that is perhaps based on personal experience or like some difficulties that you're going through, it's just kind of taking time to workshop what your boundaries are around that, how comfortable you feel, what you're happy to share with people, how you can connect your personal story to that personal brand or that personal product, what you're happy to say, what you're not happy to say, and just kind of keep keep yeah, well I always keep in mind your boundaries to make it sustainable. I
That's
hope that's
brilliant
helpful.
advice. Thank you. Because I guess when you start off with something, you don't necessarily think that 8 years, 10 years later, you're still going to be
Yes.
talking about it.
Exactly, exactly. And I think it's just, you never know. We can't go into everything thinking like, oh, am I going to want to talk about that in 8 years? But it's just, I think if you can maybe just think 8 months ahead and think, am I still going to want to be talking about this then? Um, s- start with a smaller timeline. But I just think boundaries around what you're prepared to talk about, maybe being sort of boundaried in maybe where you want your products to go or who you want to be selling them, and kind of those sorts of things just make executing a plan far easier if you've got some kind of clear boundaries and a bit of a strategy over just I'm just going to put this out to the world and see where it goes.
Yeah, I really like that. Thank you. And I guess it also makes it easier as you go along when decisions come up, because obviously difficult
Mm,
decisions do. If you've already done some of that thinking,
yes.
it
Yeah.
takes away some of that brain power, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And my final question, Finn, which I ask everyone who comes on the podcast, is what would your number one piece of advice be for other product creators, regardless of what they're selling?
Well, my number one piece of advice for other product creators, and I think we've touched on it in this, is to find your uh, sort of mentors. Find people that you trust their advice, and that's probably not going to be your parents or your uncle and aunt or your best friend. And if it is amazing, that's great. But you got to find people whose opinion matters because um, if you're if you're I if for us, we really need people in the respected people in wellness, in stationery, in mental health. Their opinions matter to us, or in publishing. What my kind of great aunt Jane thinks maybe doesn't matter so much because it's based on her bias. So I think just be really careful and who you kind of take advice from, and find some professional mentors. And that doesn't have to be someone that you pay lots of money for, or it could just be somebody that you respect in your field. Just being brave enough to ask if they'd have a conversation with you or if you could run an idea by them. and just, yeah, be careful about whose opinions you trust and listen to.
That's brilliant advice. Thank you. Thank you so much for everything you've shared. So I'm going to link to where people can find you in the show notes. There's your website, your socials, everywhere else. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Vicky.